Welcome to the Trusted Advisor podcast, where you get a deep dive into the world of financial planning with industry leaders who share their stories of winning and learning as they chart their path to success. This podcast is for the curious, those of you who like to dig into the detail, and if that sounds like you, get ready to listen and learn. And if you've been here a while and you're getting value from these conversations, I'd really appreciate you subscribing or leaving a review. It helps others discover the podcast and join the conversation. Today on The Trusted Advisor, I'm joined by someone who's not just thinking about the future of advice operations, he's building it. Nick Perrett is the CEO at Yarra Lane Group. They're a multidisciplinary firm that includes financial planning, tax, legal, lending, insurance and bookkeeping. And over the past 2 years, he's been quietly transforming how his business runs through the use of AI agents and robot process automation. What started as an internal experiment has turned into a powerful and scalable approach to automating everything from client review preparation to admin workflows. And now, through a partnership with VBP, he's making that available to other advice firms too. In this conversation, we're going to do a deep dive into how it all works, what the bots actually do, where the biggest efficiency gains are, and how this changes the way we think about team structures, client experience, and the future of advice delivery. Nick Perrett from Yarra Lane, welcome to the Trusted Advisor.
G'day, Rob. How you doing? Thanks for having me.
I'm doing very well, Nick. We had a chat a couple of weeks back. You were showing me a bit of what you're doing over there, and I thought that's pretty impressive. Everyone's talking artificial intelligence, and here's someone that actually has gone headfirst in and actually done something really productive and powerful with the ability of using artificial intelligence and robotic process automation. So I'm really keen to dig into it with you, Nick, and just get you to share how you started experimenting with AI-driven chatbots. You've called a couple of them. I think you've got Henri and Grace in operation, digital team members, and just how they handle repetitive admin tasks. So let's start with what prompted you to explore robotic process automation initially, and what was the very first use case you successfully automated?
Yeah, so how I started the journey into this world was just simply becoming aware of it. So I was at a peer group function over 2.5 years ago, and I was talking to another operator there, and he mentioned that he was building a bot, and that, set off something inside of my brain to say, God, I got to have a look at this and see what it's about. So it was as simple as that, just becoming aware that this was a possibility, and there was another firm out there using it. But that was it. That was the beginning of the journey. So I reached out and then started just exploring and asking questions and seeing what was possible. And then when I began, I very quickly saw where this was heading. And, I now know today that this will be a massive part of not only our business, but every business in the next short space of time. It's happening quick. So I imagine 3 years, this will be, really implemented all the way through our business.
Yeah, when you say you heard someone that had built a bot or more than one, so what does it take to build a bot? Is it using a particular large language model? Just give me some sort of a sense of what it takes to actually build a bot. Is it coding? Do you need a coder to write this stuff? How does it actually work?
Yeah, you do. You have like a coding team that sits there, and we don't have that. I've sort of deliberately taken an approach that we're a financial services business. That's what we do. That's what we're good at. I've got no desire to become a tech company and start hiring hundreds of coders. So the reason for that is I've spoken to a lot of peers over the journey, and look, even ourselves years ago, we went and spent money on bespoke software that we built ourselves, and we thought it was great. And I've got some peers that have spent millions on software that is designed to be the perfect solution for them. But the problem with that is, as soon as you build it, you need to maintain it. And if you're not a software company and you're not maintaining and keeping up to date, you're out of date very quickly. So just to be clear with the listeners, we don't want to be that company because we just don't have the capacity and the resources and, quite frankly, the skill set, and don't want to get into it. But is there a team of coders building it? Yes, there is. So I've seen them do it. They sit there, they write the code, they step-by-step program in exactly what the task is. So, yeah, that's how it's built in the background.
Yeah, great. So tell us a bit more about Yarra Lane before we get into the actual technicals of how you're using bots. You cover almost everything when it comes to financial services. So clearly there's great capacity here for automation to speed up the way all of those activities are actually performed. Can you just give us a high-level view of Yarra Lane as a group? I mean, all those different services you offer and client types and the markets you're in and so on?
Yeah, we have 6 different professional services that we offer under Yarra Lane, and we've evolved over time just knowing that our professional clients that we largely deal with are time poor and struggling to keep up. So what we try to do is put it all under one roof so that you're not having to go and find a relationship with an accountant, then a relationship with a planner, and then you're not sure when to use who at what time, and a relationship with a mortgage broker, a relationship with an insurance broker. So it gets quite complicated, I think, for people. For us in the finance world, we think it's quite different and they're all different streams. But I sort of have a view that people out there that aren't in our world just think we're all finance guys. And, I'll talk to one of them. So that's sort of our mantra. We try to get it all under one roof, make it really easy for clients so that they can come in. And, you had a trusted advisor, and I know that's the name of the show, but that's what we try to pair up. There'll be someone in that relationship that the client really likes and they get along with, and they should be able to guide them through the different services they're going to need, depending on what's happening in their life at that time.
Could that trusted advisor be a financial planner or an accountant or a lawyer in your team? It will be someone that's a relationship manager, but they'll be the ones to kind of coordinate the third party and orchestrate things.
Exactly. We bring in the right professional at the right time. So, you're buying a house, you're going to talk to the mortgage broker, you'll talk to one of our conveyancers to help to make that smooth. And there might be a planner at that point who's the dominant person in the relationship. Because we do all the services, we go on the journey for quite some time with our clients. We can pick them up at age 25 when they're starting a professional job. And, they're probably not a fully engaged financial planning client at that stage. Obviously, they're just starting, but they are a really engaged tax and accounting client. And then they'll need certain things, like they might get income protection, but that might be it from a planning point of view. But they will need tax services. They might buy their first investment property, so they'll need a mortgage broker. And then you fast forward all the way through and, you get into your 60s and that client sold their business. The tax return's becoming pretty simple. That trusted advisor might have been the accounting person at that stage, but it transitions over, and what we see is the planner becomes the dominant contact at that point if we've done our job right, and then the clients will naturally have a stronger relationship with the planner. So we think that that trusted advisor can shift depending on where the client's at in their journey.
Yeah, great. I want to get into the digital staff members that become a part of that team structure in a second. That's what obviously the conversation is going to be about. But just because I'm super curious, did your business come together by way of bringing in those third parties, acquiring accounting and legal, or just having people that you hired in to build those divisions within the team, the Yarra Lane Group?
Yeah, we've been around for over 40 years, so we've done it slowly, and some of those areas we've just hired a person and built out the skill set, and then, having a lot of clients with the need, we've just slowly built it up into a proper standalone business. And then there are other areas where we've done acquisitions to bolster that quite quickly and get the right people in place. So bit of a combination.
So you're really well placed, I guess, to apply some of this automation and AI into your business to really get efficiencies at all those divisions that you're describing. And some of those would be very admin heavy. I mean, many of them are admin heavy, but in professional services, that's kind of the nature of the beast. So when we spoke a couple of weeks back, you said these bots log into your systems. So they log in, they move the mouse like a staff member. They can complete end-to-end workflows across platforms like Xplan, like SharePoint for document storage. For the tech-minded listener, what AI model or framework are these bots built on? Are they powered like OpenAI, ChatGPT, or is it custom code? What's the kind of the underbelly behind these automated bots that are processing workflow for you guys?
So it's funny you say, just tracking back when you said something, it's great that we've got all these professional services, but in some ways I wish we had one, because if I'd been building processes for one area for over 2 years, I would love to be able to see where that business is going to be. Whereas because we have spread them out across all of our divisions, I feel like they're all getting started, but they're not saturated in any one spot. Yeah, so it's exciting if you've got one, because you'll get there probably quicker than we are, because we're doing it across so many areas. But yeah, in terms of the language, like it's not AI. So we use AI, absolutely. And, RPA, robotic process automation, has been around for a long time, and it's sort of been clunky. We experimented with it, as I hinted at earlier, where we used that and built our own software using it many years ago. but it wasn't that great, to be honest. In fact, it was probably terrible compared to what it is today. And I think that was just because it was like, here's a box, read in that box. If anything's slightly outside the box, it breaks. It was quite clunky. But now with AI and the ability to be able to read screens, words, and that has just gone to the next level. But what is important for the listener, I think, certainly where we're at, I don't know where others are and what their views are, but I don't want AI to go and recreate everything we've done. That's not what we need. What I need is what we do really well, like our SOA. I just want that done really quickly. So I don't want a brand new version, because if you think about that, if we just said to AI, go and draft up an SOA, I'd have to spend forever checking it to go, well, what's it done? Because I know how AI works. It can go off on tangents. It can do its own thing. So, I'd be forever checking it to make sure it does meet our licensee requirements. It's got everything we want in it. So I don't think that's what we need. I think what we want is our processes that we've worked hard to build. We just want them done really quickly.
Yeah, right.
And then that's a better for the client and a better client experience, because we're turning around. And so how's it built? It's not easy, obviously, using AI to power the robotic part, but it's certainly rules-based. Like, we set this step happens, then when that happens, the next step happens, then the next step, then the next step, and we go all the way through a process. Or we might do a part of the process and hand to our advisors so they finish. There's multiple ways you can set it up, and that'll be different for each business based on how you want to run it.
Yeah. When you say you don't want to change your process, you just want something to automate some of it to make it faster, everyone's saying, yes, please.
Yeah.
The old SOA production line, it's a laborious and time-consuming expedition each time. So I'm really curious to see how you're actually doing that and what you're doing to try and make that a faster process. But before we go there, one point that really stood out here, because when everyone thinks about AI and having automation built into your environment, especially artificial intelligence specifically, security is always the first thing people think about. How do we actually protect our clients' information? And you told me that you operate entirely within your Microsoft tenancy, so meaning that no client data ever leaves your environment. And that's a big deal in a profession like ours where trust is everything. It's what we operate on, is trust. So can you explain how you set that up and what it takes from a cybersecurity and IT governance standpoint to implement this?
Yeah, so again, we have tapped into partners that this is their bread and butter. This is what they do. And, you've got to be really selective with the types of softwares you're going to use to build this. They have to be really strict with privacy and security. And so what we use to develop this is Automation Anywhere. I'll read out a few terms here, but I know this will mean nothing to the listener. And certainly I'm not pretending that I'm an expert in this field, but we pass this responsibility to them to make sure they're compliant in all of this. And that's part of our approach before we selected these partners. And obviously VBP, I'll touch on them in a minute.
Yeah.
With how they treat privacy and security as well. But certain things with Automation Anywhere, SOC 1 Type 2 is a standard that you can adhere to with security. SOC 2 Type 2, ISO 27001 and ISO 22301. They're like the gold standard for security and privacy. And so we ensure that the people we're partnering with meet those requirements. So that's the first step. You've got to get the right people. And again, it's another reason why I don't want to get out there building this myself, because then I've got to make sure I'm complying with all of that. I'd rather just use a big organisation that has thousands of people, and that is their bread and butter, to make sure that they are adhering to those standards. And with VBP, we partnered with them because they're ultimately an outsourcing business, so they totally get and understand security and privacy and how this works. Like, they wouldn't have a business otherwise if they were letting staff members in and doing the wrong thing with where things are saved, etc. Yeah, so that's certainly how we've approached it. But in terms of just to make it real, the way I think of it is you've got an employee. That's what you've got. You set up an employee called Grace, in our case, and she logs into your system. So, if you've programmed it that she goes into Outlook, which is controlled by you on your system, and then saves a document, you've programmed her not to save it on a local C drive, which would be a disaster, and you wouldn't let an employee do that. This is the point. Like, you have rules around where your employees would save stuff, and it's going to be on a network shared drive that belongs to you. Well, that's how it operates. It's all exactly the same. So, the standards you have for your employees are the standards that you have for your automation. And if you're happy with the employees' way of working, then you're going to get it with the automation, and you probably get a little bit more robust following of the rules, because that's one thing like when you program it, no one's going off track when it's automated, because they just literally follow the bouncing ball that you've programmed.
That's where my mind went, Nick, because no matter how you trying to get everyone to do things exactly the same way is difficult. But if you program a robot to do it a certain way, it's going to do it every single time the same way every time. So there's a real scalability that is introduced there, that everyone knows what to expect because there is no variation. If everyone's agreed to the process steps, then everyone's on board, which is great. And in speaking of how to build out that automation process, when we talked about it a couple of weeks back, you said someone on your team records themselves doing a task. That recording kind of becomes the blueprint. And for firms considering doing this, how much time and input is actually required to go from a screen recording to a bot doing the real work for them? And what does VBP do in that process? Obviously, we're working with you. You've actually helped to kind of create the bot, but VBP are the ones at the back end actually building it. So what does it take? How much time and input is required from that screen recording stage right through to the real work being done?
I think the magic in this a little bit is the fact that I am an advisor. I am you. We're running these businesses. So one thing I know is that none of us have got any time or interest in spending hours and weeks and months trying to develop and build a process that's then going to be automated by somebody else. So that was the lens. Selfishly from me, I'm going, well, I've got a little time here. How can I make this as easy as possible for people to do it? That was the first sort of question I was asking. So yeah, it is literally as simple as that. Like we would sit down, there's a bit of conversation to be had, like we did, Rob, where you work out what is the best process to maybe start with within your business. And then once we pick that, and we'll help you pick that, what we then do is say, just go and get your best person in the team who's really good at doing that process. So that can vary. So in terms of what is the time for someone to get started, it depends on the process. But the longest I've had is a 2 hours, a meeting where we literally sat there and someone went through a 2-hour process to complete. And then the shortest I've had is 20 minutes, where it's like, let's just do this. And then, so we just get the person on the screen and we say, get a client or a dummy client you might set up. We're sort of using dummies now to do the recording because it's better when we just for privacy and sharing and all of that.
Yep.
So you'll set up a client and then you'll go, right, do whatever needs to be done. So it might be, annual review preparation. So you pick one client, go through, do the process. And we record it and we stop you and I'll talk you through it and ask questions and stuff like that. But it might take 20 minutes and then that's it. You're done and you go back to your day job of servicing clients, which we're all trying to keep up with. And then what we would do in the background, and this is where we use VBP, is we document that. And they're great at this because they've got a long history of outsourcing with people and processes. So they'll come back and, we're really tight with the time frames. In a week, we'll have literally every single click that your person did will be in a document for you to check and tick off on. And then once you're happy with the approach and how that's all working, then we get to building it. So again, that all happens in the background. So you'd come back in, review and say, yes, that's good. And then we start building it. And again, you just go away and back to business as usual. And then we come back to you with a working version for testing.
You talked about this, Nick. It's a digital full-time staff member, but better than full-time. They don't work 7.5 hours a day or 8 hours a day. They work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So you can actually get a huge amount of productivity. So when someone's building that first process, naturally I think that robot, Grace or Henri, is going to be able to complete the task that's been set for them initially in less time than 24/7. So you can actually then, with that one robot, that one AI agent, if you like, is actually going to be able to do more tasks if you want to add more things to that process step. But as I think I understand it, those steps, they can't be run concurrently. It's sequential.
Yeah, that's right. It's like you're sitting at a screen, you're moving your mouse around, you're opening file, you're going into this application. We think we're pretty fast and good at what we do, but we can't do two things at once.
No.
Like I can't open Xplan and be going into insuring at exactly the same time. Like it's the limitation of the computer.
Yeah.
So you can only do that with Henri or Grace. Like you can perform a task, but you schedule it out. So, you might say, go in, do this one. This takes 8 hours. We have processes that run 8 hours every single night. It'll go through start to finish, go through, do a lot of the heavy lifting overnight. But then we stop that. And, that doesn't mean that robot, that's all it can do. Like a lot of these AI agents will do specifically one thing and that's what they're really good at doing. Whereas this is sort of multiple layers of agents running via this bot. So you can then pick up another task and it might run for 5 minutes, because there might be no data there, but it's going in, checking. We have, like I said, it varies depending on how much, but you do schedule that. We've got processes that we run every 2 weeks because they're not that urgent. And then we've got processes that run daily. We've got processes that run monthly.
So I'm keen to dig into some of those things you're doing, but before we go there, at your business, Yarra Lane, you've deployed bots across 6 business verticals. You said would have gone amazingly if we'd had one to focus on, but we've got 6. So you told me about some impressive savings. You said one bot was saving you about 40 hours a month on a single bookkeeping task. So across all those processes, where have you seen the biggest productivity wins, and why do you think those areas were so ripe for automation?
Yeah, there's a few things that stand out when you want to start. I do believe there's a real power in just the simple ones as well, though. So, if you can just take out little tasks away from people every day and you're taking more of those little things that are still time consuming, then you increase productivity a lot. So it doesn't have to be just where people can overcomplicate it. Like, it doesn't need to be the one that's going to totally change the game. It's just start somewhere. Like, someone's going in every week and downloading a report and then uploading it somewhere. Well, let's get that done. And then that person doesn't have to worry about it. They're back to being more efficient somewhere else. But obviously the ones that stand out, and this is when we have that initial conversation to pick the process, what I typically talk about is what takes a long time to do. So if you've got something that literally takes half an hour or something like that to complete, then that's obviously going to be really beneficial, especially for your clients. So, if you've got half an hour per client and you've got 200 clients, there's a lot of minutes there. The other way, though, and it's sort of the total almost reverse of that approach, is what are you doing daily? So it might only take 10 minutes, but you're doing it every single day. Then that's another one that is cherry ripe. So that's typically the two ends. It's like what happens daily and what takes a long time. What we probably won't do, and mind you, like I said, we will get to this, but we just probably won't start with it. But what we wouldn't do is something that takes 10 minutes once a month.
Yeah, sure.
Because there's not enough bang for buck, if you like. But like I said, we will do that at some point because you may as well take it away. There's no point someone sitting there doing that and forgetting to do it and then it doesn't get done. And, we've all got those examples.
Yeah, absolutely. So for our financial planning listeners specifically, what kinds of tasks have you automated in the advice process? I know you mentioned bots preparing annual review packs, pulling insurance policy data, downloading portfolio statements, and even valuing properties before a client walks in. What's been the most impactful in the advice context?
What I love was just the annual review preparation. And where we've started with all of this is what were the pain points?
Yep.
Across all the units, it was like, where's a pain point? And then, all right, let's see if we can help in that space. So we used to get a few comments from our advisors around the fact that annual review meetings were coming up and some of the prep work wasn't done as consistently as they would like. So what we've then built is Grace to be able to go in and look at the annual review date. This is explaining a process, just to be clear, of what we've sort of programmed for this one process. So Grace would jump in, look at the annual review date in Xplan, note the annual review date, and it's doing this all the time, obviously, so every day to make sure nothing's missed, and then sees the clients coming up for review. So then we set the parameters around how far out from that review date we'd like a meeting to be booked. That changes per firm. Everyone's got different approaches and it fits into your style. You don't need to change anything. So for us, in that appropriate time, we draft an email up for Mon, who does all of our bookings. We've deliberately kept a human touch to this. We draft the email, which is a fairly, I'm sure you've all got standard emails you'd like to go out. So it's really just drafting that email and pulling all that together. But it does then have the smarts to be able to look into the bookings calendar, check who the advisor is from Xplan, note that, see what's available around that time and suggest dates for Mon. Mon will then take it over. So we let her run with it. We like the human touch where she'll call the client because booking meetings online for people can be a bit annoying. So that's just, again, our choice. So that first little piece of the puzzle is done by Grace and then Mon books in the time. So then what we do, we now have a date of the meeting. So Grace notes the date. 5 days out from that meeting, she'll jump into all the appropriate places to prepare for that meeting. So depending on the client and what they have and what their position is, but they might jump into BT, download all the latest reports. It's not only just downloading the reports, it's then going into SharePoint, creating the right folder with the right folder structure, with the right naming convention for those reports to be stored. It'll also then open those reports, read those reports, go into, we love Astute Wheel to present to our clients. So it'll then update the information in Astute Wheel with the latest data so that it's all live and ready to go. But then it's across everything. Superannuation, if they've got a self-managed fund, we'll get information regarding that. Insurance, we'll get the latest premiums, we'll update it. We're not just updating it. And this is the exciting bit, and the good part of this is, you get to perfect one client, like if you had unlimited time. So, insurance is a good one. I think a lot of us get the insurance details and then put into some insured and go, I don't have time for the rest of the stuff. Whereas this, you can literally put in all of the details around, what's the price, what's the policy, what's the date, every single bit of information you can get from that we'd love in Xplan and in our CRMs and Strict Wheel. You just put it all in because, obviously you've got time to do it now. So you build it that way, so all that data goes in. But then we extended it further going, and this is, again, an exciting part of this, where you not only get to automate your processes, you get to improve them, I think, because you get an ability now to have more time to improve them. So a good example for us was the property stuff. Everyone's got property in our portfolios. So we said, well, why aren't we doing a rough valuation of all of these properties? So we now do. We jump into RP data, get a valuation report, and when I say we, obviously Grace does this, gets a valuation report, saves it in the right folder, updates the valuation, and again, we set the parameters. Do we want the high, low, medium point, which the valuation often puts in? And then we have all that ready to go. Not only do we do all that, we then also, as part of our approach is, we like to have a PowerPoint presentation that we do for our annual reviews. So it will then go and create the PowerPoint presentation pack, update the slides with the information from the downloads. So it's all done. And now advisors know that 5 days out, they've sort of got everything there ready to go. But that gives them, and this is an important part, that gives them time to go in and add their personal touch and flair to the documents and the presentation pack to be able to keep that human part in the process. So that's one good example of process. And I think the way, in terms of what I've shared there, you can see what it's doing. It's going across everything you would normally do yourself. But it's jumping into RP data, going to Xplan, we're using Strict Wheel, we're using PowerPoint, we're using email. Like, it can do what you're doing effectively, and just in a really step-by-step process.
Yeah, it occurs to me that the role there of a client service officer or a client service associate, we call them, so essentially it's a large part of that function, which is very manual in nature. You've actually got that automated now, and you're elevating the client service person to be doing the touch points, doing the personal things that actually make it most meaningful for the client. So they feel connected to the human being still, but the human's got now more time to provide that personal touch without having to be caught up in doing data entry and pulling data reports together and so on.
Yeah, or worse, scrambling because the information's not there and trying to do it, half an hour before a meeting or whatever, or doing a meeting without information, which is even worse again. Yeah. So all of this, the way we look at it is we just say, how do we improve the client experience? That's how we've done it. And there will be a time where we pivot because we'll have done a lot in that space, and then we'll say, how do we improve different areas? It might be internal reporting and stuff like that. But right now, we really just focus on the client experience. And if we can get all of that information every single time, the advisor's happy. And, if you think about what clients really want, they want time with the advisor.
Yeah.
They want to speak to the person and not have to wait because the advisor's busy updating all of this stuff, and they can't return a phone call or they can't get on the phone proactively. So the whole angle here is to free up the advisor's time so that they can do what we believe the clients want, which is interact and engage with them and build a relationship.
Yeah, well, starting with the client experience seems a good place to start, doesn't it? When you're doing this stuff. So, you made a great point there earlier about automation forcing standardisation. I love that. Every firm has advisors who tweak things their own way, which fragments workflows, and you get different client service associates saying, oh, my guy likes it this way, or my advisor likes it this way. And there's a bit of personal preference that creeps into the way things are done. So you can't get that sort of consistency through your business. You said automation was a catalyst to bring consistency back for you guys. How did you manage that shift culturally, and what advice would you give to other firms wrestling with this issue?
Yeah, I think this is a big one, definitely, because it's funny now we're going through a process with a broader group where we're looking at all processes, we're going to see how we're doing it, and then we're going to come up with one way, and it's this great big project. And it's great. But as I said, this is great and you're going to spend a lot of time and we'll all agree on one process. But I can guarantee you in 3 years' time, you'll be back, or you'll need to be back, because everyone will be doing it a slightly different way. Yeah. That's just normal in business, because what happens is you're going to go and hire someone in 6 months. Well, they weren't on this meeting. They don't know, and they've come from another firm that thinks it's better, or someone actually might come up with a better way to do it. But they don't want to go, hey, guys, everyone's doing it my way. I've come up with a better way. So they just go, look, I'm going to do it this way. It's a bit faster. But they don't share that knowledge back to the team, and everyone doesn't benefit. So I just think it's natural that you're going to end up with fragmented processes if you're leaving it for people to do it their own way. In an ideal world, everyone just follows it, but we don't live in an ideal world. So, yeah, this is now sort of a game changer, because, you know, you obviously can set a process up for the firm. And if you do want to change that process, you can change it for everybody. And your culture can change a little bit. And we're starting to see this, where we're trying to encourage, can you improve the process for everybody, and come up with suggestions and present it. And then if we love it, we can implement it quickly for everybody. That's a bit of a shift. But in terms of culturally, like with the people, what we found is that we're automating the tasks they don't want to do.
Yeah.
And they hate doing them. So it hasn't been difficult to go, hey, look, you know, all this stuff that you have to do before the meeting that you dread doing, and it's, you know, monotonous, repetitive, and it's not stimulating. If we can automate that for you, there's very little pushback, I can tell you now. They're all going, thank God. So, yeah, I think culturally it's been fine, but obviously, you know, you need to explain, because there is that initial fear of the robot's going to do everything. Yeah, but if you explain your strategy, what you're about, why you're trying to automate tasks to free them up to talk to people, to do the jobs they don't want to do, then, yeah, you quickly get by.
Yeah, I mean, that's the key obvious next question, isn't it, that certainly you would have faced internally. So, you know, bots have replaced the need for you perhaps to hire or retain additional staff that you might have had or planning to hire. I think you talked about one example was where a super admin role that took 38 hours a month is now being done in 2 days by a bot. Has the implementation of robotic process automation had you rethink your headcount and hiring plans, or the types of people that you want in your business going forward?
Yeah, it has, to be honest. Let me explain that story that we keep referring to, the 38 hours, because it's a really good one on the power of this. So we had a lady, Joey, who a VVP staff member, so outsourced staff member. Her job was to go in, download a set of reports every single month. We did payroll for hundreds of clients. So very time consuming, you know, have to filter different reports, one with proprietors, one without, et cetera, et cetera. And, you know, you're limited by how quickly the software refreshes these reports, then you've got to save them in and SharePoint, et cetera, et cetera. So she did that every single month. She's brilliant, very, very switched on operator. And that was her job. We now know the time it takes because we measured it. And, you know, it does take about 38 hours. So if you break that down, Joey works 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, that's 40. But like I mentioned to you, Rob, people don't work 8 hours flat out. And that's not a criticism of people, that's just life. They've got emails, they've got meetings, they've got coffee breaks, they've got, yeah, so you're not literally clicking around doing the task for 8 hours a day. You know, you might get 4 or 5 out of people, I think is probably more realistic. So this task was taking about 2 weeks. That's in line with that thinking. But there's a bigger problem here, because it was causing tension across the teams, because if you're client 95, you're having to wait 2 weeks to get these reports. Now, we need these reports to go and do other tasks. So we have other people wanting these reports to then be able to go and complete other tasks. And a client might complain going, well, I want mine 5 days in. Why is it taking 2 weeks? So then Joey gets harassed. All right, I've got to stop everything. I've got to get out of my routine. I've got to go to this client on the list, and then I've got to go back, remember where I was. So you can see how this slows her up and is a problem. So we were able to get that task down to 2 days because we built the process. We started it. We pressed go. And then 2 days later, every single client has their report. And it's just all of those problems, like overnight, gone. And the best bit then is Joey, who... she's brilliant. Like I said, she was underutilised. It was total waste, thinking back now. Yeah. Having her, that was all she did for nearly 2 years. And she did it amazingly well. But that was basically the job. There was other stuff at the end of the 2 weeks, but, you know, not as significant. It was really get ready for that. We've now been able to upskill her to be able to sit there and be processing payrolls and doing way more value add stuff and more important stuff for the client because of all of this got automated. So I honestly think if we had sat there and let Joey do that for another 1-2 years, she probably would have resigned. It's a boring job just to be doing that all the time. So you're actually freeing your people up from this stuff that is quite boring and repetitive, and that's a good thing. And that has meant now we get to repurpose Joey and use her, and she's a great contributor. And for her career sort of progressed further up from where she was. And, I think it's just a great story on what it can do. And yes, that's probably meant we haven't hired somewhere in that chain, but it's not like you're getting rid of people. You're really just saying, let's reuse them.
Yep.
And I often answer this question, when we can sit there and for all the listeners and everyone, like hand on heart, say we are doing absolutely everything we can possibly do for our clients. Like until we get to that point, you're always going to have a chance to go, well, let's do this now. Like we should be doing this better. Can we do more here? So we're so far from that, I believe, that, to get your staff member back, who's a really good staff member, to be able to get them to do something else is the key to this.
I couldn't agree more. I was actually listening to a Kitsis podcast. Actually, I think it was the Kitsis and Carl podcast a few weeks back. They're talking about, will AI take our jobs? And Kitsis commented and he said, when the internet became a thing in the late 90s, early 2000s, and what we now take for granted was a new technology, and it was an amazing game-changing technology for efficiency, but productivity increased, but margins didn't increase. But just because you do more, you start to do things better than you could do before because you've now got the capability of doing them. So your point's well made there, Nick. It's not like you can't redeploy staff then that don't do the menial tasks on other things that you really wanted to do but never had the capacity to do or capability of doing.
That's right. And if you fast forward that and play that out, like if we just cut everything down and got to a point where you're running at 80% margins, what do you think is going to happen? A competitor's going to come in and go, well, I'll do it at 30.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're out of business anyway.
Yeah.
So, you can't get greedy and do that. It's just not going to work.
Yep.
Because, you're doing the bare minimum for your client, but running it at 80 with no people, well, that's not sustainable. Someone's going to come in and do a lot for that client and charge the right fee by offering more services. So, I think there is a bit of a natural evening out of this stuff where you'll get to the right figure.
There's always that competitive tension, isn't there? Now, you showed us a Power BI dashboard that tracks each bot's output in hours saved, cost offsets, and even the opportunity cost of freed up time for high-value work. How important has that visibility been in demonstrating the ROI to your team and justifying further investment in automation?
That's probably the accountant in me coming out, chartered accountant previously and still am. But I just like to measure and know what is the output here. So, again, I always look at this from a lens of people are going to come in and have exactly the same questions I've got. So let's be proactive and build this dashboard so you can see all the benefits that it's creating. And, as I said, Rob, you've seen the dashboard, we highlight the 4 key benefits that we believe you're getting out of automation and track it. And it's easy to do because we know exactly when it starts and when it ends, and we're tracking every minute that it's working and what it's doing and how many transactions it's posting and how many clients it's working on. So we are really thorough with that audit trail around what it's doing and how long, so you can get a dashboard to measure it, and also help you design your next process.
Yeah, certainly it's an exciting prospect for people who are listening to this, I'm sure. So for listeners wondering what it costs, you mentioned when we spoke, $5,000 a month is what it costs to get a bot license, if you like. And there's an upfront sort of $5,000 fee per major process to be automated. That's how you guys price that service. Can you break down what a firm actually gets for that investment and how to think about that cost relative to a human hire?
Yeah, I think you've really nailed it. You just think about it relative to a human hire. That is it. It's like you're spending $60,000 for an employee that is going to work, as you said, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and be quite quick and efficient at it if you fill it up. It's no different to an employee. If you hire an employee and don't give them anything to do, they sit there twiddling their thumbs and, aren't very satisfied. So it's the same idea. You're getting a time in a day where you can fill it up and you get the bot doing those tasks. Yeah, so that pricing as well, I'm sort of, again, putting my owner lens on. You don't pay until it's working. And I say that we should qualify that with you pay for the build, so that there's a sort of a 50% upfront, $2,500 to get your first process going. Once it's built, you pay the final 2.5, and that's when you start paying the $5 per month. Because again, you never charge someone for services they're not using because you're taking 3 months to build it. Like, that's just not fair.
Yeah, sure, that makes sense. So a lot of our audience will be small to mid-sized firms. they'll be intrigued but maybe a bit daunted by the tech. What's your advice to a principal or a practice manager who wants to get started with it, with AI automation, and where should they begin and what should they avoid doing? Because you've obviously been through this journey.
My advice would be start. Yeah, I think that's pretty obvious now. Like you need to start this, because if you don't, in 5 years' time, there'll be agents offering the services you're doing faster than you can do it.
Yep.
And it won't be a little bit faster, it'll be a lot faster. And if you're just sitting there twiddling your thumbs, I think it's going to be really hard to be competitive. But I also think there's a really good opportunity for us, because whilst I think that will definitely happen, and what time frame, who knows, what it can't do is have a human element to it.
Uh-huh.
And I actually still believe that's what people want. They want that human connection, and they want that trust that they can build with a person to help them navigate, especially as they get older and so much scammers and stuff like that around, and it's getting more sophisticated and difficult. So I think people are always still going to want the human connection and the relationship with an advisor. Having said that, the advisor's got to be up to speed. This is why I'm saying get started. You got to be quick enough. If people are offering 5 meetings a year, 6 meetings a year, or because they've got more time to be able to do that, and you're still offering one and taking forever to do an SOA, there's probably a point where they're like, oh, guys, I may as well go somewhere else. So my advice would be start. You just need to have the conversation to go, what's the first process to start with? I often say to people when we're having these meetings to set that up for them, you don't have to overthink that too, because by the time you build the first process, which takes the longest, because we have to get all the security right, the IT right, set up right. So there's a big chunk of work in getting all of that established for you. But then once it's established, you've done all that heavy lifting, so future processes are quicker. But by the time you build that first one, which might take, say, 3 months to be up and going, you've probably thought of another 4 or 5 and learnt a lot. And you're going to do, like my view is, you'll end up doing about 50 odd processes in your business if you've got one business.
Yeah.
So what number 1 is on the list of 50, who cares? Just start with 1, and then you'll pick 2 and 3 after that once you get familiar with it.
Yeah, great. No doubt you've gone through a bit of a journey that probably hasn't been all smooth sailing along the way. What's been the biggest roadblocks you faced, whether they be technical ones, cultural? Doesn't sound like there's been many cultural issues, operational issues. And how did you work around the roadblocks that you've encountered?
The big thing, I won't share too much because I'm not sure how many listeners are on the end of this, but I will give a little bit of insight. One thing we learned the hard way would be just make sure that your testing environment is really well thought through. So you might have a process that you're building where in the fullness of time, it might be able to send an email to a client, for instance. But when you're testing and building it, we would never do it where it's going to send an email to the client. So you would stop that process in the building phase, maybe 3 or 4 steps before the send button, is actually pressed. And even then, anything that goes to the client, I don't really love that, still. And we've been doing this for 2 years. I sort of prefer the draft to be drafted for our advisors to review and send to the client, as opposed to, it being sent directly. So it's just that sort of stuff that we've learnt, where it's like, just make sure you're stopping it early enough in the testing phase. Because we did on a couple of clients, have where it sort of went out multiple times in the very early days, and we quickly learned. But that's also why you test, 1 or 2 clients at the beginning until you've nailed it. So that was an embarrassing learning that we had.
It's a good bit of advice, I'm sure. So many advisors are going to ask, what does my licensee think? And you've reassured us that bots operate like a separate user and their actions are fully auditable. Have you encountered any compliance pushback or hurdles from either your licensee, or you probably maybe self-licensed, I'm not sure, or other people who are using these bots and their licensees' perspective on them?
No, haven't yet. And, I think we're in total control. We don't get it to pretend it's someone else or do anything like that. It's literally logging in. You've got full transparency, full audit trail. Like I said, it's the same as an employee. I get asked this question, what if we wanted to turn it off or, whatever, and we weren't happy with it? It's like, the simple answer is, well, what if an employee resigned and left your business? What would you do? You've got an offboarding process. You'd make them inactive and they can't log into it. They've got no access to any information. So it's exactly the same. Like, they have their own setup, own license, own email, own everything, so that you can track everything they've done. And if they're not there, you just switch it off and then they can't get access to any of your systems.
Yeah. You've described this when we spoke previously and again today. It's just the beginning. Everyone's just beginning to explore this. even though you've already automated a dozen workflows in your business, what's your longer term vision for agentic technology in your business? And do you think every advice firm will eventually have a few digital employees working in the background silently?
Definitely. I think there's no question that that will happen.
Do you have a vision for your business, Nick? Where do you think, let's say we're all forward 3 years from now, you've been at this for 2 years, so 3 years, a big number of years, given the pace at which this is moving. Where do you think your business will be in 3 years from now?
I think we'll be able to do a much better job for our clients and a much, much better job for our clients than we're doing today in terms of, accounting, doing financial statements. Potentially 3 years' time, we'll get all of the financials done in the first quarter of the year. Whereas, you're scrambling in March, April, May to get them done by the May deadline. I think that's absolutely going to happen and be very possible. Advice, you sit there forever waiting for SOAs to go out. I think they'll go out in a matter of days. So that's what I'm certainly thinking will happen. And then if you think about that, what that does, if you can do that and conquer those two things, then what else can you be doing?
Yeah.
So the business will look totally different, because if you nail those huge bottlenecks and get that core bits right for your clients, they're going to be much happier. People now, I think, gone are the days, and I remember this from starting work, and you'd get a tax return. This is back a long time ago when I first started, but you'd do it straight away. You're a grad, you got nothing to do. They give you a tax return, you do it in an hour, and then you'd be told, no, don't send that out. We can't send the bill out. You've literally done it in 5 minutes. But those days are gone. I think of those days when I started. Like right now, people want things done quick. They just want it out of their hair. They don't have to think about it. They will pay a premium to get it done quick. It's the total reverse. It's not like, oh, that took you too short a time. That's not the case. They'll pay you more to get it done out of their mind, don't have to think about it. And that's the premium service. So that's where I think it's moving. That's where I think we'll get to. And I'm pretty confident we'll be able to conquer those two big ones in a short space of time.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. It's exciting for sure. So as we wrap up, one more question for you. You're offering your spot service now more widely through your partnership with VBP. In your view, what kind of financial planning business is best positioned to benefit from this? It sounds like you're probably going to say everyone. So I'm keen to hear your answer. And are there any firms where this approach you just think won't work?
So I do think all planning businesses, to be honest, and it's not just planning businesses. I think it's also any business that really uses a computer, which is a lot of them, but they're the ones where I think it probably doesn't work so well is like, for instance, a large institution like a bank, for instance. We're in that perfect sweet spot, I believe, in the SME space where we might be dealing with an advisor might have 200 clients. 200 is a very small number.
Yeah.
You might have, across your firm, you might have 10 advisors. Well, that's 2,000 clients. That's a very small number. Whereas if you're a bank and any of these massive institutions with huge amounts of data, they've got millions of stuff that they need to go through. So maybe they do want more of the API and the RPA, this sort of solution doesn't apply to them. So maybe that's not appropriate. I'm sure there is parts of their business, obviously, that they could utilise it. But when it's just that the data volume is too big, because you literally are going in client by client and clicking through and updating, I think if the data size is just enormous, then maybe it doesn't apply. But honestly, for the rest of us and all of the SMEs, it's going to apply.
Yeah, I agree with your point earlier. You talked about the fact that automation won't replace the human. It'll just augment them. And the fact is that people still do want human connection. They still want someone they can trust to talk to. So that stuff will be perennial in nature, but the stuff that we are doing behind the scenes that people are currently paying for, we can make that a much more efficient way of getting things done so we can be more present, more available and provide better services to our clients. So I love that framing, Nick. It'll resonate so strongly with everyone listening for sure.
Yeah, and I think I sort of break pretty much our client interactions into 3 parts. We collect information from them. There's a human bit to that, and a bit of automation, definitely, like in terms of making that easy for our people to go and chase and get information. But that's the first piece of the puzzle. The second piece is we then process it. They have no idea how we process it. They don't sit there watching us do the work. They don't care. They just want it done accurately. That's a minimum standard, like get it right and do it quick. So that's that middle piece that we're really playing in. And then the third bit is the delivery. Like once we've done it all in the background, they don't know how. We've all got different ways of doing it and they don't care. But when it's completed, we've got an SLA. I think the real skill is then delivery. Like, how are you connecting with the client, explaining it, taking them through it? That bit, again, we're not automating that at all. That's the bit that is the human skill. So, I think that middle piece of the puzzle, that's what we want to really automate.
Yeah, it's a very compelling business proposition, Nick. Congratulations on being an early adopter and applying it to your business and being someone who's actually leapt straight in and actually implemented some of this tech, which we're all hearing about, and actually applying it and making your business better. I'm thinking that the listenership on this one will be big because it is the most topical thing, and it's such a powerful message around how to actually make your business more capable of doing more profitable potentially. And it does make you rethink the whole model of business in terms of who you're hiring, what are they going to be doing, and perhaps redeploying some of your current team as you can start to automate some of these processes. So thank you for joining me today, Nick, on the Trusted Advisor podcast.
No problem, Rob.
Thanks for tuning into the Trusted Advisor. I hope today's conversation brought you new insights and inspiration for growing your business. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on your favourite podcast platform, leave a review and share it with others in the industry. And don't forget to connect with us on LinkedIn for updates on future episodes. Until next time, keep building trust, embracing innovation and driving success in your practice.